मिलकर के फोटो निकालने का एक कार्यक्रम हुआ था। इस बैठक में शामिल दलों के इतिहास को देखेंगे तो पता चलेगा, तो ये सारे मिलकर के कम से कम 20 लाख करोड़ के घोटाले की गारंटी है।
Prime Minister has only one process he is doing to make washing machine. All the corrupt people are with him only, Prime Minister only.
नरेंद्र मोदी जी का पैनिक रिएक्शन हो रहा है, ये पैनिक रिएक्शन, ये जो ऑपोजिशन वालों को जो फ्रंट हो रहा है, पटना मीटिंग सक्सेसफुल हुआ है, शिमला में मीटिंग होने वाला है।
परिवारवाद की परिभाषा इन लोग अपने अनुसार करते हैं। जो भी मामले हैं ये सबको पता है, वेंडेटा पॉलिटिक्स के तहत किए जा रहे हैं।
Those BJP leaders must once again bring out that meter, highlight the scams of those leaders that are part of the Eknath Shinde group, and tell the world that who the real scamsters are.
We are sure if people come together, transcending political parties and political differences, people can defeat RSS-led BJP.
Well, is the BJP nervous as the opposition claims, or the opposition unity is merely a photo op, as the Prime Minister asserted in Bhopal? Joining us on the broadcast is our full panel, Mr. D. Raja, who's the General Secretary of CPI and ex-MP, Mr. Nalin Mehta, who's a Group Consulting Editor, Mr. Syed Zafar Islam, who's the National Spokesperson of the BJP, Madhu Gauriaski from the National Congress Spokesperson, and Riju Datta from the TMC. All are joining us on the broadcast. Good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen. My first question to Mr. D. Raja. Sir, I'd like you to open the debate. And the Prime Minister said that this is an alliance of the corrupt. He also accused the opposition parties of lacking any kind of agenda and coming together merely for a photo op. How do you see that statement?
It all shows that Prime Minister is jittery because during Karnataka elections, there was a strong issue raised by people. The then BJP government was 40% commission government. Prime Minister campaigned in Karnataka. He never responded to that. He never answered to the people who raised corruption of BJP government at that point of time. Now Prime Minister is speaking too many things, and because everyone knows the ED, IT, CBI, all central agencies are being used by the union government in order to target the opposition leaders, the non-BJP state governments, in order to intimidate them.
But sir, the criticism that the BJP or the Prime Minister which is being levelled is not without its merit. The fact that there is no united agenda or a common minimum program or some kind of a leadership phase that can be projected from the side of the opposition all make it very prone to the criticism that this was a mere photo op and nothing else.
I'm happy wherever Prime Minister goes, there is no camera for a photo opportunity. There is no media to give coverage, live coverage. People should take note what is happening with the Prime Minister's visits wherever he goes, not only abroad, even inside the country. No photos, no camera coverage, footage. So why Prime Minister should resort to such criticism? He should have serious discussion, argument on issues, and the secular democratic parties are concerned with the future of nation. What's going to happen to India, because the 9-year rule has been proved to be so disastrous, detrimental to the basic tenets of the constitution, the secular fabric of our society, the federal principles of our governance. And that is why the secular democratic parties are coming together. They have come together and they have declared their common resolve that in order to save the nation, BJP has to be removed from power.
Yes.
Desh Bachao, BJP Hatao. That is the urge among the people and among the secular democratic parties.
It's interesting that you talk about the concept of secular democratic nation, because there was something that was mentioned by the Prime Minister as well, that we work for the benefit of all and for the appeasement of none. Mr. Syed Zafar Islam, I want you to come in. The opposition party says we have a common plank, and the common plank is to defeat the BJP because that is in the national interest. The words like secular are very often used by the opposition parties to put a charge on the BJP that the party indulges in the politics of polarization. I want you to respond to that charge, sir.
Well, they also need to entrust it. What they have done in last 70 years, particularly I'm talking about Congress party, and then of course the left party as well. They have done nothing for the betterment for the people of this great country. They have only made promises. They never lived up to their own promises. Bijli, Pani, Sadak, all these slogans we have heard from the Congress party, but actually it has not been delivered by our government. In 9 years, we have changed the minds of the people, because they always felt the government will never deliver, because it's all the false promises they are being made by the successive government. But in 9 years, you ask anybody on the street, they will say that yes, this government has run several welfare schemes, not one or two, 315 welfare schemes. And who are the beneficiaries? The common man on the street. So all these allegations which is being made by Mr. Raja and many other opposition leaders are actually baseless, because they all know that all these allegations which they intend to make or the narrative they want to build will not work, because there's a huge number of people who admire the Honorable Prime Minister. And reason why they admire, because their interests have been safeguarded by the Modi government. We have a governance model which actually safeguards the interests of the common man. And that is something which was never been experienced by the ordinary citizen of this great country. That's why what I'm trying to tell you, that no matter what the narratives they want to build, it will not work. Because the beneficiaries who have been benefited by the government, run by the government welfare scheme run by the government, are the ones who acknowledge that this government has made the difference in their life, and their quality of life is improved. Because earlier, those who had no home of their own, now they have their home of their own.
All right.
They don't have a water connection at their home. 9 crore people families have got a new water connection. And for sanitation.
So the broad argument, sir, that you're making is that the welfare schemes do not discriminate between individuals, and that is the hallmark of any welfare state, which is actually secular in its true nature. Yeah, a quick point, and then I want to bring in Congress and Mr. Nalin Mehta also. Yeah.
Let me give you one example. Today, PM has also spoken about Paspanda Samaj. See, the beneficiaries, I'm trying to drive a point. The beneficiaries of all the welfare schemes of the government, it is for Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. So, like for instance, constituency where I am responsible in Bharatiya Janata Party, Muradabad, where the beneficiaries for all the schemes,
I get that broad point, sir. I get that broad point.
Because because they have always been denied. They have been promised, but they have never been delivered. That's why they are in a state where they need support of the government, and the welfare scheme is something which
let me bring in the Congress party into this. Madhuji, the key argument of the BJP always has been, and each time this classic debate is prompted of polarization versus the appeasement, that look, if you're accusing us of polarization or any kind of discrimination and bias, look at the development schemes on which the Modi government has worked. And all these welfare schemes are targeted towards citizens who deserve this support from the welfare state of India, not on the basis of religion or any kind of caste, creed or any kind of identity politics. Then what is the basis for the Congress party to make allegations of these nature? More importantly, today was also the talk of the Uniform Civil Code that the Prime Minister mentioned. He also said that the Muslim community is being misled because there's the politics of vote bank that parties like Congress have often indulged into. Madhuji, please go ahead, make your point.
Let me make it very clear to you. Till 2014, as if Prime Minister is saying, or Zafar Islam is saying, there is no development. I mean, people were going in a bullock carts. There was no airports or ports or projects. Second point, what Ms. Jafarul Islam is saying, when Congress does right to education to employment guarantee scheme during UPA, is it not that those schemes are marked to every citizen of the country or deserving people? When we do it as an appeasement, when they are doing it in a development, what kind of a logic is this? And Prime Minister also spoken about Parivarvad. I would request your cameraman to zoom it and see how many of the BJP leaders belong to same family here. And third point, Prime Minister ji in US has given lecture about India is the largest democracy in the world. You tell me, any democracy can survive without any strong opposition? Let me remind my friend from BJP spokesperson, Advani ji himself in 2012 has said it in their parliamentary committee meeting when they were fighting in 2009 for leader of opposition post between Jetli ji, Sushma Swaraj ji and Advani ji. Srimati Sonia Gandhi ji called him and requested him to resolve your infighting in the party because country needs a strong opposition. Let me also remind through you, through the people of this country, Pandit Nehruji, when he was a Prime Minister, he himself used to criticize by writing an articles in the newspaper by a pen name about the Prime Minister decisions. No democracy can survive without any strong opposition. Mere giving a lectures on democracy will not work. And Prime Ministers and BJP thinking to eliminate entire opposition in the country, that's not democratic.
But sir,
governance
substantiate that argument.
So
How
you need
is
to have a strong opposition to have it.
The BJP or
And
the government cannot be held
one quick
responsible.
point. The
BJP or
programs
the government do not have the responsibility of strengthening the opposition.
Meant to every citizen of the
How
country.
is it that the government is decimating the opposition? You can make that quick point and then I'll bring in Mr. Nalin Mehta and also Mr. Riju Datta.
What Prime Minister is saying, he's talked about the corruption. Who's stopping the investigating agents to take action? On what basis the Prime Minister has come up with a 30 lakh crore of loot? Who's stopping? Is it not the duty of the Prime Minister to stop that corruption? Is it not Prime Minister promised to the people of this country that he will bring back 75 lakh crores from abroad? Kala dhan wapas leke aunga. People like Ramdev Baba type like have spoken and promised to give every 15 lakhs rupees to every citizen of this country.
Yes.
Is that happened?
Okay. I take those broad points. I want Mr. Nalin Mehta also to come into the discussion. Mr. Mehta, I'm sure you heard the address of the Prime Minister in Bhopal and the response, of course, that has come in from the opposition parties. The semi-final for the 2024 is all set to happen with the 3 crucial assembly elections in the Hindi heartland. What kind of battle lines have been drawn? And the charge of the Prime Minister and the BJP, does it stick?
Look, this is very much par for the course. I think this is a very aggressive Prime Minister reacting for the first time on the question of opposition unity. I think the gambit on the Uniform Civil Code is interesting. It's the last of the BJP's core, what used to be called the core agenda of the BJP, you know, right? Article 370 is done. The Ram Mandir is now being built. Uniform Civil Code is a vestige from the 80s, which one of the issues that brought the BJP to the forefront. And the Prime Minister is batting from the front foot on it, I think is significant leading up as we get into election mode. As far as the Prime Minister's comments on the opposition unity are concerned, look, the fact of the matter is that opposition parties are very clear that that unless you band together, you're not going to be able to beat the BJP. The devil is in the detail. Will this be just optics or semantics or the detailing of how do you get common candidates, how do you get the index of opposition unity right, and all of that in the past, there are examples of both ways. In the past, in UP, in 2019, all parties were together, SP, BSP, and the BJP still won the majority of the seats. Before that, if you go back to say in the 80s and so on, in this opposition unity has been known to beat bigger parties. I think what the BJP is, what we are going to see now is a lot of shadow boxing. You're going to see a lot of claims and counterclaims on both sides, and I think this signifies the beginning seriously of election season.
Absolutely. Mr. Riju Datta, coming to you. You've been patiently listening to all the speakers, but I have one question for the TMC. And even yesterday we were discussing this topic here on Brass Tacks, and the statement of Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, one of the Congress leaders, and he said we went there for a wedding celebration of sort, and he rather hinted that this was a photo op opportunity and nothing more to it. The TMC and the Congress party has not seen eye to eye on multiple issues, and Congress party is not the only party with which the TMC might have an axe to grind. That being said, do you think that there is a national agenda on which the Congress and the TMC can be on the same page? Will the TMC or Mamata Banerjee ever accept the leadership of the Congress party? Mr. Datta.
Yes. I'll give you a straightforward answer. The question here is Adhir Chaudhary a bigger leader than Rahul Gandhi in Congress? That is the question. Adhir Chaudhary is the Congress state president in West Bengal, under whose leadership in independent India, for the first time, Congress has turned into a zero in the state of West Bengal. I believe all the stalwart opposition leaders, the primary leaders that are taking BJP head on, they all met. Congress was present there. Their tallest leader, Rahul Gandhi and Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge, was present there. And there is a common minimum program. And the common minimum program is BJP ko hatana hai, desh ko bachana hai. Simple as that. For its people, for the constitution, for the country to survive, we need to take this BJP out of this country in 2024. So in that perspective, what Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary talks about in Bengal is very irrelevant. That is question number one. Point number one. Point number two, in Bengal, see, regional politics and national politics are two very different things, very different logistics, very different optics. But in Bengal, local Bengal politics, the Congress has tied up with the left, and they have also taken the help of the BJP, because I have got multiple pictures to show where BJP and Congress candidates are, doing wall writing and printing posters together for campaigning during the Panchayat polls. So it's all right. In Bengal, it is TMC versus BJP plus Congress plus CPM. But that is state-wise. In the national perspective, it is BJP on one side, it is everybody else on the other side who are secular, who are progressive, who are democratic, and who want. But
Mr. Riju Datta, isn't that a very convenient definition of secularism? When it suits you, you align with the secular party, and when it doesn't suit you, you fight with them. But before that, Mr. Syed Zafar Islam has a point to make. Please go ahead, sir.
When these opposition parties, when they talk about the common minimum program, actually it only translates into a license to loot the country. That is what they are up to. Because they know that exactly on their own they cannot fight with BJP, so they want to align with each other, even though all are fighting in these respective states with each other, but still they want to go on the same platform, only to have a common minimum program, which I term it as the license. It is a license for them to go back and loot the country. But this time, this has been very well understood by the people, and they will give a befitting reply to people such.
Mr. Riju Datta, what kind of secularism is this that suits you at the national level but doesn't suit you at the state level? That's politics of opportunism 101. I argue, respond to that.
The tallest leader in the BJP is Mr. Narendra Modi.
Yes.
All these years from 2024 till 2021, whenever the opposition wanted to counter Mr. Modi, he has always given us a reply as a sarcastic comment or a sweeping jibe. But today, his fiercest attack ever at the opposition clearly shows the RSS internal survey, his IB survey are not healthy. They are not good for BJP. So clearly, Pradhan Mantri Modi is shaken and the obviously jittery because it is not looking good for him in 2020.
Mr. Zafar Islam.
And just 10 more seconds, Anusha. And what Zafar Saab just said that, it is opposition is getting together because they want to loot the country. There is a saying in Hindi, ki dhool muh pe hai aur aina saaf kar rahe hain. The people who you campaigned against, the people who you called Brashtachars, chores, and you campaigned like Conrad Sharma, Hemant Biswa Sharma, Naroda scam mentioned, which the PM mentioned today. Charge sheet mentioned leader of opposition of Bengal, Shubhendu Adhikari, are your
You've made your point. A quick from Zafar Saab, and then I'll move on to other guests as well. Mr. Syed Zafar Islam, if the opposition unity is a mere photo op and it has no substantial basis, this is not a challenge to the BJP, then why is the party so nervous? That's what the opposition is asking you. Why there is so much reaction just because they had a meeting in Patna and are going to have another one in Shimla?
Who is nervous? Are we nervous? They are overly worried about BJP. That's why they are coming together. We are not at all, because we enjoy the confidence of the people. And that's why we are absolutely clear that we have to only serve the people, serve the nation, and safeguard the interests of a common man on the street. And that is something which we have done in the last 9 years. And we are absolutely confident that we will again have a thumping majority in 2024. Because these people have their own agenda. They have no agenda except to come back to the power. They are trying to piggyback on each other. But people understand that their intention is to be on power, not to serve the nation.
I have last 2 minutes on the broadcast. Madhuji, are the opposition parties trying to piggyback on each other? The Congress party has a very decisive and a critical role in the opposition unity. You are the first amongst the equal. And, the Congress party has been staking claim to the leadership position within the opposition camp. Do you think you can bring all these warring parties together, including the AAP and the TMC, to which your party doesn't see eye to eye?
Well, Congress and Rahul Gandhi ji, Mallikarjun Kharge made it very clear. It is no big brother leadership here. We take it as a consensus and a consultation and lead together. So this quick point here, Mr. Islam should answer. He's talking about corruption. Why Yedurappa was removed in Karnataka? The 40% Sarkara, what Mr. Raja was saying it, how the BJP was defeated in Karnataka, people of Karnataka voted and the most corrupt government in the country. So they have no moral standing or authority to speak on corruption. And the second quick point, they are in the government. Last 9 years in the government. Have they proved any charges which they made in 2014?
Okay.
Right from 2G scam to Indus scam.
As I conclude the debate, I want to give the last word to Mr. Nanil Mehta.
So making mild, viable allegations, nothing but in a rhetoric which they're doing it
do you
last
think,
9 years.
especially in the Hindi heartland,
which is
in the 3 states of Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, corruption is going to be one of the key issues? Or perhaps the battle lines very sharply drawn on a socio-cultural plank is going to be the decisive factor? Nalinji, if you can hear me. That question was for you. All right, we'll try and connect with Nanil Mehta. We seem to have lost that line with Mr. Nanil Mehta, but that's broadly the argument that has been put out. I want to once again go back to Mr. Syed Zafar Islam, who continues to be with us on the show. Zafar Saab, the key question the opposition parties have repeatedly asked is that there are these broad sweeping allegations of corruptions which have been made, but so far there is no absolute or a decisive conviction in a court of law that has happened. A very brief answer from you, sir.
Well, the brief answer is that it is not for us to pronounce the judgment. It is for the court to pronounce the judgment, and matter is pending with the court. There are people who is on the bail, like Mr. Rahul Gandhi is on the bail. What can we do? Because it is the court which has given them bail instead of putting them behind the bar. So our job, or as the agency's job, is to always pursue the case and try to take it to logical conclusion. But it is the court which actually pronounced the judgment, not us, not the government.
All right, Mr. D. Raja, Nalin Mehta, Syed Zafar Islam, Madhu Gorniaski and Riju Datta. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Mehta, I wanted to come back to you, but I'm sorry, I'm absolutely short of time right now. Thank you for sparing us time and joining us on the broadcast. And this is going to be an interesting battle to watch out for, the semi-final for 2024, as many argue. We're slipping into a very short break. Up next on the other side, Prime Minister Modi sparks the Uniform Civil Code debate yet again. The opposition accuses him of playing politics of polarization ahead of elections. That and much more on the other side.
and overall support for the Indian community and their presence, their contribution to society, and recognizing Diwali as public holiday is just another sign of that.
All right, Abhishek, please stay with us. Now we are showing you the visuals right after the announcement was made in New York City.
Diwali! 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 This is what victory looks like. This is what victory feels like. For over 2 decades, the South Asian and Indo-Caribbean community has fought for this moment. People said this day would never come, but today we stand victorious inside of City Hall. Our time has come, and we have arrived at the table of power. Last Diwali, Mayor Adams and I laid out our vision to make Diwali a school holiday through a city-state partnership. We said we would do it, and we did. I thank Mayor Adams for being the first and only mayor in the history of our city to elevate the Diwali school holiday cause and put the force of his administration behind it. Last Diwali, the mayor and I announced our city and state partnership to create this Diwali school holiday. And we saw it all the way through to victory today. Today, the mayor and I are proud to stand before the whole world and say that from now on and forever, Diwali will be a school holiday in New York City. Ladies and gentlemen, it is to be enshrined in law. Diwali at last will be a holiday in our great city. So today we say to over 600,000 Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, and Jain Americans across New York City, we see you. Today we say to families from India, Guyana, Trinidad, Nepal, and Bangladesh, we recognize you. Families just like mine. My family is like every South Asian family standing behind me today. My parents came to this country from India with just $300 and a...
Welcome back. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made a strong pitch for the Uniform Civil Code while addressing party workers in Bhopal. The Prime Minister said that Indian Muslims need to understand that some political parties are misguiding the community. The Prime Minister argued that if there are no different or two set of laws for family members of a single unit, then how can separate codes or laws operate in India? Well, for a very long time, the reform of personal laws has been a victim to the politics of appeasement in India. Remember the Shah Bano judgment where the Supreme Court granted equal rights to Muslim women for maintenance upon divorce. The elected government of the day at the centre stepped in and subverted the reformist move of the Supreme Court by bringing in a special law. No other democratic republic across the world has a parallel verse of personal laws which is uncodified and customary like India. The lives of women from various communities are still governed by these archaic extra-constitutional so-called laws. The issue of Uniform Civil Code is the issue of equality of rights. It is less a question of uniformity or practice, but rather an issue of guarding constitutional rights enshrined in Indian Constitution. While the search for a perfect time for the implementation of the Uniform Civil Code is an argument of absurdity, there can be no perfect time, and the best time is now to make UCC a reality. our focus on brass tacks tonight.
हमें याद रखना है कि भारत के संविधान में भी नागरिकों के समान अधिकार की बात कही गई है और सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बार बार कहा है। सुप्रीम कोर्ट डंडा मारती है, कह रही है कॉमन सिविल कोड लाओ। ये वोट बैंक की राजनीति करने वालों ने हमारे जो पसमंदा मुसलमान भाई बहन हैं उनका तो जीना भी मुश्किल करके रखा हुआ है।
तो क्या यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड के नाम पे आप प्लूरलिज्म, डाइवर्सिटी को छीन लेंगे क्या आप? वो करना चाह रहे। यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड की जब बात प्रधानमंत्री कर रहे हैं, वो यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड की नहीं बात कर रहे, वो हिंदू सिविल कोड की बात कर रहे हैं।
नेशनल इंटरेस्ट में होगा, कांग्रेस पार्टी हमेशा उसका साथ देती है। अभी तक तो ऑफिशियली कुछ उन्होंने दिया नहीं है।
यूसीसी बाध्यकारी नहीं है, ये देश का संविधान कहता है। 21वें विधि आयोग ने भी अपनी रिपोर्ट में कहा था कि फिलहाल देश में यूसीसी की आवश्यकता नहीं है।
Well, joining us on the broadcast is another special guest. We have Mr. Mahesh Jethmalani, who's a member of Rajya Sabha and also a senior advocate at the Supreme Court. Thank you, Mr. Jethmalani, for speaking with us and joining us on the show tonight. Today, we talk about a very important issue, the Uniform Civil Code. I'm sure you're aware the Prime Minister has spoken on this issue, and he says in one family, there can't be two sets of laws. The set of laws, even the personal laws, need to be uniform in this country. I just want to understand from you, there are various criticisms when we talk about a uniform civil code. There's the argument of diversity, there's the argument of timing, the right politics and posturing. How do you see this as a student of law? Is the time ripe and correct for us to have a UCC?
Well, I mean, diversity is undoubtedly a good value. But the point of the matter is, diversity can't be used as a smokescreen for oppression. Now, diversity doesn't mean, for instance, that you have triple talaq and subject women to, the vagaries of a man's whims and fancies, and the breaking up of the marital cord on the recital of 3 words. So, I think we're making a little bit too much of diversity. Diversity also needs to be reasonable. So when critics talk about diversity, I think the answer is that, listen, there are other values which are more laudable than just diversity. And one is equality in the case of women. And also, upholding the sanctity of marriage, I suppose, to some extent.
There are various people who argue that there is the 6th schedule of the Constitution. There are various special tribes and communities recognized, say, in the northeast of the country, which is a matriarchal society, some segments of it. And to have a uniform civil code is not something which various communities or their religious bodies are opposing. But even under the 6th schedule, it is constitutionally a very problematic concept. Do you agree with that, sir?
Well, I'm not saying it's not free from all problems, but that doesn't mean you don't make a start. Right, and certainly all stakeholders will be taken into consideration. Their views will be called for, considered, mulled over, and then you will get. But a start needs to be made. I mean, it's a constitutional mandate of 75 years now. Our Constitution, Article 44, contemplates it. So so how long is this going to go on? There are always going to be archaic practices. There are always going to be some customs and conventions. But ultimately, the purpose of a uniform civil code is to bring civil life with some uniformity, but more than that, afford dignity to all. It can't be a backwater issue. It's got to be now, conforming to modern notions and even our present constitutional morality. So, and modern notions of what constitutes dignity and equality, etc.
Mr. Chief Milani, I believe, as while covering the Supreme Court, looking at our judgments in the last 1 decade, I have found that the tone of reform in our country, especially pertaining to personal laws, is somewhere hijacked by this super, hyper vigilant notion or these phobias of, look, the diversity is under attack. We are not able to have a sane discussion as far as reform in this country is concerned, especially when it comes to personal laws. Any kind of reform, whether it's coming from the government or even the Supreme Court of India, has been resisted and even overturned in this country. Do you believe the time is right, the political atmosphere is right? Because there are many people who argue, look, the political atmosphere is not right, we need to wait for the elections to get over.
No, I don't think so at all. I think, in fact, it should be an election issue. I really think that it's now time to test this issue. The BJP has had it in its manifestos for a long time, and it's going to implement it going into the next election in 2024. I think it needs to be tested. And I think it's a very serious issue. And we've had our forefathers who, as I said, debated for long periods of time on the issue of the Uniform Civil Code, and then incorporated it in Article 44. So it's a constitutional mandate. It's time now, and Supreme Court from time to time, as far back. The Shah Bano has been reminding the government about its constitutional responsibilities to implement directive principles, and this is a good cause. It doesn't oppress anybody. Everybody is going to have to give up those angularities in its religion, those prescriptions of their religion, which don't conform to sensible or rational practice. I mean, it has to be. Yeah, there are once upon a time, even the West didn't provide franchise to slaves and women, and all that has changed now. So notions keep evolving, and especially notions of equality and dignity.
What would you like to tell those critics who call the argument or the cry for a uniform civil code a way to target the minorities for political gain?
Let me just say this. I've already said something about the diversity mantra, right? But now diversity, which ought to be really a liberal concept, right? It's now becoming the mantra of arch conservatives, of fundamentalists, and doctrinaire espousers of religion. I think this has to stop now. It is time now that, and nobody better than Prime Minister Modi, with the massive mandate and support he has, to fulfill India's constitutional destiny, and bring it completely, into modern notions of, as I said, egalitarianism and dignity, and he's got to now take the bull by the horns, right? No matter what the criticism is, right? Ultimately, it is going to be debated. It's not going to be forced on anybody. It's going to be debated. Everybody will see the rights and wrongs of anything that's being done.
Absolutely. My last question to you pertaining to UCC is that the present government, Modi government, has had 2 terms, and it has been a very emphatic mandate. In fact, this government has been very assertive about the legal or the constitutional changes that they wanted to bring, say, this abrogation of Article 370 and various other legislative and legal measures that they have taken. Why do you think UCC has not been a reality so far? And in your understanding, the UCC, bringing of UCC and making it a reality, would it be one stroke of a statute, or would we require a series of legislative methods and statutes to make it a reality in India?
Well, I think the delay is because out of, although Article 370 was contentious, right, it was really contentious only, for people in Jammu and Kashmir, and particularly vested interests in Jammu and Kashmir. But this, given the diversity of Indian society, particularly the religious diversity, and to some extent the caste diversity, which will be affected by any legislation on Uniform Civil Code, right? This had to be carefully considered, sorted out. And there's been a simmering debate going on even in the courts for a long time.
Right.
And aspects of it, for instance, the hijab issue, triple talaq, all the, nikah halal, which is pending right now. All these, had we had a uniform civil code in place, there wouldn't have been so much time taken in the courts for all these, issues, frankly. So I think, just one strong reason also for doing this is that, we are cluttering the court with issues, of social life, which could be resolved at one stroke of a statute, by one
Absolutely.
statute.
The courts don't need to decide what is written in Quran or in Gita, and perhaps this is a job which is best left to the legislature. Sir, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts as far as Uniform Civil Code is concerned, and I'm sure this is going to be a very intriguing debate. Well, joining us on the broadcast is Mr. Dushyant Dave, Senior Advocate at the Supreme Court of India. We also have Mr. Raman Lekhi, the former ASG, and also a Senior Advocate. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Lekhi, beginning with you. There's a very strong statement that has come in from the Prime Minister, and this is not the first time that the present government is talking about the idea of a Uniform Civil Code. Your thoughts on UCC, its implementation in India, and is the time ripe for it?
Well, I got a fourfold objection to that. Timing, method, legality and benefit. Timing in the sense that, see, whenever you come out to the law, there are competing interests and you have to prioritize some of the others. And in that event, it's a policy decision as to what is it that you give preference to. The occasion and necessity to deal with the Uniform Civil Code at this point of time, particularly when we are going to elections the next year, puts into focus, a sharp focus, the choice of the time for bringing this issue up, because for whatever it's worth or benefit, it's a polarizing issue. And so far as the method is concerned, the method would entail a central enactment. Central enactment because of the residuary part, because otherwise the concurrent list is not exhaustive enough in any case. And that is the impact upon the federal principle, and the residuary power has been invoked an exception, not the rule, and merely because it's legal would not necessarily justify its implementation. The third is the legality, the assumption that Part 3 of the Constitution governs it, and therefore certain aspects of it will in fact impact the rights. I mean, the Supreme Court has held the country. I have my reservations about the view of the Supreme Court, because I don't think Article 13 will cover personal laws, considering the other provisions of the Constitution, including 44 and the 7th Schedule. So the very basis of bringing it about. And fourthly, insofar as the benefit is concerned, you see, we don't need to follow the French method in any case, and we have our own distinctive culture, and our culture, in fact, celebrates diversity. Any kind of uniformity, in fact, enforced uniformity, and one which is in some ways superimposed from above, may have consequences quite contrary to what is actually intended. I am not for a moment suggesting that individual aspects of particular laws don't need change, and I personally feel that that will be a progressive change and was warranted, but I would require the timing to be better, the method to be thought out, and so far as the approach is concerned, approach rather than from being comprehensive, being incremental, and focusing on areas which require immediate attention rather than an all-out approach for a comprehensive change.
Mr. Dave, I'd come to you. Why is it that the Uniform Civil Code or the debate around UCC is heavily political in our country? And I'm sure that's inevitable. It will happen. But it also needs to be seen from the prism of gender rights, equality of women. There are various facets of personal law which are highly discriminatory against women. There are different other facets which are problematic in other ways. The UCC, why can't it be a reality in India? Do you agree with Mr. Lekhi when he says that the method and timing both perhaps need to be thought about?
Well, I think I cannot but agree with Mr. Lekhi in entirety in what he says. And he has made some very responsible and responsive, suggestions about it. The difficulty is that the cat is finally out of the bag. Every time the Bharatiya Janata Party is likely to face the elections, it wants to really fight on emotive issues. Prime Minister then forgets his so-called development agenda. His Vikas, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, everything is put behind the burner. And he then comes up with this to target the minorities. And this is very unfortunate because the Prime Minister or BJP do not need this. They are a responsible party. Prime Minister today is the most popular leader in the country. And many of us may not perhaps, wish that Prime Minister becomes so popular, but he is popular. We have to accept it. Therefore, he doesn't need to. Now, most important thing is this, that when the Mughals came to India, they did not impose Sharia law in India. Why is it that we are trying to do something which even the Mughals did not perpetrate in this country? They could have easily, because they came from Central Asia and they were following Turkish and other laws. but they did not impose Sharia law. The Hindu law, Hindu customs, Hindu traditions were all allowed to go side by side with the Muslim law, which was being enforced amongst the Muslim community. So I feel that, yes, the timing is disastrous. You know, we speak about, unity in diversity, and yet we want to talk about these kind of issues which are completely irrelevant to my
Please allow me an interjection. In most democracies across the world, and you understand law much better than me, you tell me one country which has a parallel system of personal laws and a modern democratic nation like India has. There might be certain facets of it, but the manner in which there's a whole scheme of personal laws which are almost immune in many ways after Narasu Appamali to the judicial scrutiny is very, very problematic in Indian law. And I also want to understand this from you. As a student of law and politics, where does one draw the line that this is about targeting of minorities and this is about reform? Because often in Indian history, any kind of reform, even when it was coming from the Supreme Court in the Shah Bano judgment, it was often seen as an attack on the minority community of this country.
No, I am not about minority, attack on minority. I am only saying that this is a political game. What is important is this, that Prime Minister Modi's government appointed Justice B.S. Chauhan to head the Law Commission of India. And Justice Chauhan, after an thorough and extensive study, after having received more than 75,000 representations from people across the country, concluded that UCC is neither necessary nor desirable. Now, this was 2018 under Prime Minister Modi's government. Now, it is therefore very shocking that you appoint a commission gives a report, and yet you want to start this debate for no reason. So forget, the legalities have been examined by the Law Commission of India. It is ultimately the body which advises the government as to which laws should be brought, which laws should be amended, what should be done and what should not be done. So it's not just me saying that. This is what the Law Commission has said. So I personally feel, and there are many, there are extremely complicated issues here. For example, under the Constitution, the Article 371 and 6th schedule provide a very certain specific, protection to many communities in Mizoram, Nagaland, and many other states.
And in fact, sir, that was one issue that was mentioned in the last report of the Law Commission as well under Justice Chauhan, as you mentioned.
About, there are matriarchal societies there in Northeast. I mean, where women are all, powerful.
Mr. Lekhi, then how is it that we should deal with problematic aspects of certain personal laws? Say in Islamic personal laws, Mr. Aman Lekhi, even today, polygamy is permitted. The age under which a woman can be legally married off under the Islamic personal law is once she attains puberty or, after 14 years of age. These are aspects of the personal law which are problematic in nature. A huge body of the Muslim personal law is uncodified in nature, forget statutorily recognized. And these are problematic aspects that need to be dealt with the spirit of reform rather than with the tone and tenor as if this is some kind of targeting of the minorities.
Well, I don't agree with the way in which this is framed. With all due respect to Mr. Dave, I would not frame it as a Hindu-Muslim issue. And I would definitely not bring in politics into it. I think this is a very serious matter. And that's precisely why I have objections. Because it's a serious matter, and it's a matter which does require attention. And I feel that aspects of which do need change, and we have necessarily to scrutinize it and bring about some element of egalitarianism in a society which is in some way retrogressive on those terms and treats a large section of its own population unfairly. Because these things are required, it is necessary that they be brought about in a way as is free of suspicion. It is not what is the actual intent, but what is seemed to be the intent, which is very important for the credibility of a measure. And my objection, that's the reason why I said timing, because it's an easy criticism of a good move, that this is political and meant to target minorities, as being said over here. Now, the benefit would be politically for all Indians, and it is not as if the minorities would be affected. The majority also, if there's uniform civil code, the majority would be equally subject to change, because it's not as if the Hindus would be in any way exempt from it. This is not something that's a popular misunderstanding. It's only regarding minorities. Uniform civil code will affect the Hindus too. What I'm saying is that because it's an important measure, we have to approach it in a manner as it vindicates its significance, rather than in some way condemn it to a controversy and let it lose its efficacy for all times to come.
Yes.
What is at issue is the destiny of a country. And a destiny of a country has necessarily to accommodate all interests. An accommodation of all interests warrants taking them into account in a sober, sensible way and not bringing it only as a propaganda tactic.
Absolutely.
The measure, as you very correctly said, the measure is significant, but the method has to be equally wise. And I am not... whatever the politics, whatever the anti-minority tirade, I think as a measure it's important, but the method is what I'm actually concerned with.
Method is what you're concerned with. But one last question to both of you. Mr. Dave, coming to you. When the reform has come in for any community, even during the Hindu Code Bill when it was being implemented in India, there were protests by certain right-wing organizations belonging to the majority community. And similarly, things have been seen from the various Islamic groups and various Muslim bodies, say the All India Muslim Personal Law Board. Each time there has been an attempt for some kind of reform in personal laws, including the moves that have come in from the Supreme Court of India. I want to understand the timing bit. Can there really be an ideal time or method for reform which is so uncomfortable, politically uncomfortable, socially uncomfortable in a diverse country like India? Mr. Dave.
Let me say, first and foremost, I mean, I have great affection for my learned friend, Mr. Lekhi. And while he says that he disagrees with me on my statement, he actually agrees with me when he says timing and method are important.
Yes.
So that really shows that this is nothing but a political measure. Secondly, on your polygamy aspect, the Law Commission found that, in fact, amongst the Muslims, polygamy was the least. It was, tribals was 15.25%, Buddhists was 9.7%, Jains was 6.72%, 5.8% amongst Hindus, and amongst Muslims 5.7%. And the Supreme Court has in fact said in one judgment that this kind of a bigamy which is prevalent amongst the Hindus is shocking. So this argument of 4 wives and some 20 children and all that is nothing but to create some kind of an unfortunate situation in this country which should be avoided. Secondly, that look, ultimately, what is it that you want to do? Reforms? Of course, everybody must agree to reforms. Mr. Lekhi and I both are unanimous that reforms must be brought. Now, Supreme Court brought the first reform by saying talaq is not the right way of going about divorce amongst the Muslim women. And women today in this country are protected in many other ways, including by virtue of Article 14 of the Constitution. Take, for example, Hindu women. The daughters, despite the Hindu law amendment in 2005, how many families do you know in India who are willing to give equal share to the daughters in family?
I get the drift of your argument, and to have the social reform in the real spirit as the law intends, it takes a while. Mr. Lekhi, as I conclude this discussion, I'd like to ask you the same point. You spoke of the method and the timing and how it needs to be done. I reiterate that question, that in a country as diverse as India, with competing interests, social and political, even religious, can there ever be the ideal time for reform?
After elections.
Mr. Lekhi, can I have you also?
No, you see, merely because the measure is problematic doesn't necessarily mean there's never a right time for it.
Yes.
There has to be churn in society and there has to be debate and discussion. So there's absolutely nothing. The question is not the right time as such. The question is actually approaching it with the right perspective and having the right frame. That's exactly the issue I have right now. There can be some doubts entertained about how this is being framed and the purpose behind this particular activity. So the opposition then would be guided more by the presumed intent than the real, actually it may be a very good motive. When it gets lost in the intent and once start doubting the motive, then the efficacy of the discussion also dissipates, because the method which is supposed to unify further polarizes. What I'm saying is there'll always be opposition. But the point is, you factor that opposition when you initiate a particular action, and because you initiate an action, you have to give yourself time to in some way coalesce the competing interests. And I don't think we have adequate time in this year to bring this about.
All right, Mr. Dushyant Dave and Mr. Aman Lekhi, gentlemen, it's always a pleasure talking to both of you. Thank you so much for giving us your time and being a part of this discussion. Uniform Civil Code, a much required reform in this country. The timing and the method is what the experts are talking about.
that was long overdue is now coming to the fore. We have seen how Prime Minister Modi was welcomed, and there was again a bipartisan support there in the Congress when Prime Minister Modi was addressing. So that tells that irrespective of the of the policy, which side of the politics in USA you are, there is an overall support for the Indian community and their presence, their contribution to society, and recognizing Diwali as public holiday is just another sign of that.
All right, Abhishek, please stay with us. Now we are showing you the visuals right after the announcement was made in New York City.
Diwali! 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 This is what victory looks like. This is what victory feels like. For over 2 decades, the South Asian and Indo-Caribbean community has fought for this moment. People said this day would never come, but today we stand victorious inside of City Hall. Our time has come, and we have arrived at the table of power. Last Diwali, Mayor Adams and I laid out our vision to make Diwali a school holiday through a city-state partnership. We said we would do it, and we did. I thank Mayor Adams for being the first and only mayor in the history of our city to elevate the Diwali school holiday cause and put the force of his administration behind it. Last Diwali, the mayor and I announced our city and state partnership to create this Diwali school holiday. And we saw it all the way through to victory today. Today, the mayor and I are proud to stand before the whole world and say that from now on and forever, Diwali will be a school holiday in New York City. Ladies and gentlemen, it is to be enshrined in law.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Our top story tonight is China's economy. The sluggish growth is testing the Communist Party. Today, China's premier tried to push back. In front of investors, he blamed the West for China's economic troubles. But few are buying his arguments. Behind the scenes, we can tell you, Beijing has gone into an overdrive. It has ordered extreme measures. The central bank is stepping in to arrest the fall of the yuan, the Chinese currency. And a crackdown has begun. Tonight, we'll get you the latest from Beijing. Also, the rebellion in Russia has spooked Xi Jinping. Perhaps Taiwan should thank the Wagner Group. We'll tell you why. And the mercenaries may have an uncertain future, but more people are looking to join their ranks, including the Gurkhas from Nepal. They want to join Wagner. The World Cup schedule is out, the Cricket World Cup. Pakistan apparently not very keen to play in Ahmedabad. And English cricket is being called racist, sexist and elitist. And finally, humans are tilting the earth. A new report links it to depleting groundwater. We'll explain what that means. The headlines first. Ukraine accuses Israel of being pro-Russia. In response, Israel has summoned Ukraine's envoy. Israel has adopted a cautious approach since the war began. It has sent humanitarian aid to Kiev, but has stopped short of giving weapons. Sudan's paramilitary announces a 2-day unilateral ceasefire just ahead of Eid. The Sudanese army is yet to respond, though. Around 2,000 people have been killed in the war that began in the month of April. Google moves India's Supreme Court. Reports say the tech giant has urged the top court to quash antitrust directives against it. Google has been accused of abusing the Android market. India is one of Google's most crucial markets. Severe storms wreak havoc for air travelers in the U.S. More than 1,700 flights cancelled or delayed. New York, New Jersey and Boston airports are the worst affected. The storms have affected more than 40 million people in America. And India will host Pakistan for the 50-over World Cup. It will be the first time in 7 years. The clash between India and Pakistan will take place on the 15th of October in Ahmedabad. Tonight we begin with China. The big headline is their economy. It is under pressure. Growth is slowing down. Exports, manufacturing, property, retail, all key sectors are underperforming in China. And what is the Chinese state doing? It is blaming the West for all of it. Listen to this.
As you know, some in the West are hyping up the so-called cutting reliance and de-risking. These two concepts, to a certain extent, are a false proposition.
De-risking is a false proposition, he says. Li Qiang is attacking the West. He's the Chinese premier. And he says the West is pushing the agenda of decoupling. That's the plan to move away from Chinese factories, the plan to develop alternative supply chains. The world is working on it, and of course, Beijing doesn't like it. Li was speaking to international investors, and it sounded like a desperate attempt to win them back. But this is just the facade. Behind the scenes, China is pressing the panic button. Emergency interventions have been ordered. Crackdowns have begun. As the numbers paint a dismal picture, China is trying to take control of the narrative. Let me show you the latest. There was a sell-off today. China state banks sold their dollars. They sold US dollars and bought more of the Chinese currency, the yuan. You can call it a currency swap of sorts. How does it help? Quick background. The Chinese currency has been weakening against the greenback, the US dollar. Its value fell by 4% in 2 months. So an intervention was necessary, first to arrest the fall and then to spur demand for the yuan. And that's the reason why Chinese banks have intervened. They exchanged their dollars for the yuan. China's central bank has also pitched in. It injected more funds into the market. All in all, Beijing has gone on the offensive. It is aggressively defending the yuan and its own economic policies. Plus, it has launched a crackdown. Influential financial experts are being muzzled in China. People like Wu Xiaobo. He's a very prominent expert on finance. He writes for a famous Chinese news website. And he's published many best-selling books as well. Now, this man is being muzzled. Yesterday, he was banned from Weibo. Weibo is China's version of Twitter. Wu had almost 5 million followers on this platform. And now he's been banned, and his recent posts have been deleted. Now, we cannot pinpoint on the exact trigger for the ban, but we can tell you that Wu's suspension is part of a bigger crackdown. Recently, a top data provider was also suppressed. I'm talking about a platform called the Wind Information Company. What did they do? They published data on Chinese markets. Investors outside China relied on this platform to make their bets. But suddenly, Beijing has cut off access, so overseas clients could not get data from this company. The clients began looking for alternatives. They turned to experts like Wu for insights on the Chinese economy. They wanted to understand what's going on in China. And now Beijing is going after these experts too. This is a clear signal. China wants to control the messaging. It does not want any bad news to go out. But it may be too late for this, because leading experts the world over have already made up their minds. Yesterday, we told you about the S&P report. S&P is a global ratings agency, and it has slashed China's growth forecast from 5.5% to 5.2%. Other Wall Street banks are also pessimistic, like Goldman Sachs. They've downgraded China. Earlier, the estimated growth was 6%. Now the forecast is 5.4%, according to Goldman Sachs. And what does this bank say about China's economy? It says the economy looked strong after reopening, but the recovery has now, quote-unquote, fizzled out. Calls for a stimulus are intensifying in China. Experts say Beijing should pump money into the economy to revive it. And these are not just outside experts. These are also people who work for the Chinese state. People like Ning Jize. He's a senior official and a member of a top political advisory authority. Let me quote from what he said. It is better to introduce measures sooner rather than later. The question is Beijing listening? So far, there are no signs of a stimulus, only talks and crackdowns. The Communist Party is trying to mask its failures, but the writing is on the wall. The era of high-performing growth in China is coming to an end, and Beijing's current policies will only slow it down further. So China is struggling, and the larger business environment is not helping. It's tough to operate in. Business leaders across the world are tightening their belts. This year began with mass layoffs. We are halfway through it, and the layoffs are not ending. Earlier, it was the technology players. Now, banks and advisory firms have joined the layoff wave. Goldman Sachs is firing its top officials. It will ask 125 managing directors to leave, 125 MDs. This is across departments, offices, and countries. So why is Goldman Sachs firing senior talent? Because they're unable to generate new business. Reports say the company has faced a deal slump, so 125 managing directors have been asked to go. What's the overall situation like? Well, bad, to put it mildly. In less than a year, Goldman Sachs has ordered 3 rounds of layoffs. Last year, some positions were eliminated. In January this year, more than 3,000 people were laid off, and now managing directors are facing the axe. Then we have advisory firm KPMG. It's on the same boat. KPMG has seen, or rather is seeing, its second round of layoffs. More than 1,900 people are being let go of in the US offices. 4 months back, they laid off some 700 employees. Third on the list is brokerage firm Robinhood. They too are slashing jobs. 7% of their full-time staff is set to leave, 7%. What about India? How are Indian companies faring? Well, not spectacularly, I'm afraid. They too have been hit by this layoff wave. Indian companies are slashing jobs just like the rest of the world, and the IT sector is the worst affected. So far in this financial year, almost 5,000 people have lost their jobs. More than half of these jobs were based in Bengaluru. It's the IT hub of India, and Bengaluru has seen a sharp dip in hiring too. In fact, this month, there was a 7% dip in hiring. So basically, companies are hiring fewer people and firing many. And by all indications, this trend is here to stay for a while. So companies are also moving into smaller offices. They're leaving bigger spaces. And the result is this: a record number of offices are now empty. In the US, office vacancies have touched the 20% mark, meaning 1 in 5 offices is vacant. In cities like San Francisco, Dallas, and Houston, vacancy rates are as high as 25%. In London, about 14% of the city's floor space is empty, 14%. In Hong Kong, about 13 million square feet of office space is vacant. These numbers could get bigger. More companies want to shrink their office spaces. Earlier this month, a global survey came out. 347 top companies were part of the survey. Half of them want smaller offices now. 2 reasons why. Number 1, fewer employees are coming to office. Many are still working from home. And number 2, companies have a reduced headcount. Many people have been fired, so they don't really need big offices. Now, this has led to a new problem: bank defaults. Landlords are unable to pay their debts. Defaults in commercial real estate is on the rise. Leading property giants have defaulted, like RXR, Columbia Property Trust, and Brookfield Asset Management. And what's the value of their debt? Well, I don't have a number, but experts say it runs into billions of dollars. One of the developers I mentioned is RXR. Earlier this year, its chief executive spoke out. He said they're unable to lease some of their properties, so they're resorting to some extreme measures. In fact, let me quote from what the CEO said back in the month of February. With some of those, I don't think there's anything we can do with them. Give the keys back to the bank, and you've got to be disciplined about it. And that's what they did. Handed the property over to the bank. Last month, they gave up a 33-story office building in Manhattan. The loan on this property was worth $240 million. So RXR decided to default. And this points to a larger trend. The global economy is in a slump. Now, we've seen a slowdown before, but this one's different. It comes after a life-altering pandemic. It may change our jobs and our offices irreversibly. Meanwhile, the Russian rebellion is very much in news. Its fallout is still being assessed. What happened was dramatic and unprecedented. Wagner fighters were barely 200 kilometers from Moscow. They were coming for Putin's seat of power. A few more hours, and they would have reached Moscow. So why did Putin not try to stop them? Why did he not dial the Wagner chief himself? Questions like these were doing the rounds over the past 2 days. Late last night, the Russian president decided to address them. And he sounded almost defiant. He said he let the mutiny go on to avoid bloodshed.
From the very beginning of the events, that is the Wagner mutiny, on my direct order, steps were taken to avoid a big bloodshed. This took time, including to give those who made a mistake a chance to think again, to understand that their actions are strongly rejected by society, and to what tragic, destructive consequences for Russia, for our state, the adventure in which they were dragged leads.
So that's Putin's side of the story. The man who intervened finally was the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. And he says that Russia mismanaged tensions with Wagner. It's a rare comment from the Belarusian leader. What he means is that Putin did not deal with it on time. Now, the rebellion was playing out in Russia, but the whole world was tracking it. Both Putin's enemies and friends were watching the drama as it unfolded. None more than Chinese President Xi Jinping. After all, he shares what he calls a no-limits friendship with the Russian leader. But there's more to it. Xi Jinping has his own selfish reasons. You see, China has long looked at its northern neighbor as an example. They have a shared past. And of course, their common love for communism. The fall of the Soviet Union rattled Beijing. They scrambled to cement their own leadership. They focused on the economy, the Chinese. They focused on the economy, and they clamped down on dissent even harder to avoid a chaotic implosion, the kind that the Soviet Union saw. China did not want to meet the fate of the Soviet Union. Then came the war in Ukraine. Russia launched the so-called military operation in February last year. It expected an immediate victory. But 16 months later, Kiev still stands, and the Chinese found a lesson again. They realized that invasions are uncertain and risky. So if Xi Jinping wants to invade Taiwan tomorrow, he would have to think twice. He may know how the invasion will begin, but he can't be sure how it will end. And if a win is not immediate, it leads to uncertainty. It leads to a standing conflict. The kind of conflict that could shake a leader's hold on power. It's happening with Vladimir Putin. It may also happen with Xi Jinping. So Beijing will try to learn from Moscow's mistakes. And pictures like these would have shaken them. People in Russia were seen cheering the Wagner rebels as they took over a city. Take a look at this. The short rebellion exposed the cracks in Putin's regime. And this may have been shocking for the Chinese leader because just like Putin, he too has done everything to consolidate power. The Communist Party's biggest nightmare, in fact, is a mutiny. So back in the day, they rolled tanks against their own people in Tiananmen Square. China, in fact, spends more money on internal security than its army to take on the world. Chinese leaders are paranoid when it comes to popular protests. And the scenes in Russia would have given them the chills. Also, like I said, some lessons. So what can China learn from the Russian mutiny? To be wary of a parallel power center. You see, Russia let Wagner grow. It nurtured Prigozhin into a feared leader. It allowed Wagner to become a dominant force. And private armies are often a slippery slope. They can do your bidding, but at some point they can also challenge your leadership. So that's lesson number one for China, no private armies. As of today, they don't have any. There is absolute state control. Which brings us to lesson number two. Who do you trust? Prigozhin was Putin's close aide, his so-called chef, part of his inner circle. But he betrayed that trust. How will Xi see this? Well, he's already paranoid. He came to power in the year 2012, and since then he's eliminated political rivals, actual and perceived. It has been an endless purge of high-ranking officials and junior party workers in China, both tigers and flies, as they're called in Beijing. Everyone got the boot in the name of an anti-corruption campaign. More than 100 military commanders were fired. In 2022, there were murmurs of a divide, a crack in the Chinese leadership, and Xi Jinping dealt with that swiftly. He kept shuffling the top leadership so that no one but him remains constant. Which brings us to the third and the last lesson. Both Xi and Putin are strongman leaders. They don't care about democracy. All they care about is their image and power. When Putin was challenged, his image took a hit, and Xi Jinping wants to avoid any such scenario, so expect a stronger control on the press. China, in fact, is already dealing with a host of troubles. The economy, as we told you, is slowing down. Growth is not where it should be. Investors are leaving the country. The last thing they need is a mutiny. So it looks like Prigozhin may have done Taiwan a favor. He has showed Xi Jinping the risk of an invasion. The mutiny in Russia also put a question mark on the future of the Wagner Group. What will happen to their fighters and their chief? He's said to have gone to Belarus. What about his troops? Vladimir Putin has given Wagner soldiers three options. They can either join the Russian military or return to their families or take refuge in Belarus. So the Wagner Group is far from being dead. In fact, reports say they're seeing a flurry of new joinings, and some of them come from unexpected quarters. Youngsters from all the way from Nepal seem to be joining this group in Russia. Videos of young men from the Gorkha regiment training with modern weapons are doing the rounds on social media. They're said to be joining the Wagner Group on contract. The question is, what has prompted the shift? Our next report explores. These are supposedly youngsters from Nepal, showing off their guns for TikTok videos, sharing a laugh with their colleagues and training intently to get battle ready. But which battle are they preparing for? The one being fought in Ukraine. These young men want to join Russia's Wagner Group. Reports say Moscow is seeing a flurry of applications. And among those applying are youngsters from Nepal's Gorkha regiments. That's right, the famed Gorkha regiments. Known for their bravery, these youngsters are joining hands with Wagner. You may ask why. And the short answer is, for better opportunities. Think of the Wagner Group like a corporate company. They're looking to expand their operations and need manpower for it. In return, they offer good salaries and even advertise to recruit. Look at this ad, for example. It was posted on Twitter. It invites people to join the Wagner Group. And it's offering this, an honest salary of 240,000 rubles. That's about 2,700 euros, plus health and life insurance, as well as good bonuses for results. Now, for many of these youngsters and retirees, 2,700 euros is no small amount. Also, they get to fight the war with modern weapons. So many are said to have signed contracts like these to join the Wagner Group. Last month, President Putin also signed a decree. It offers Russian citizenship to those who sign up for 1 year of military service for Moscow. This is said to have opened the floodgates for Nepali youths. Other requirements like language have also been eased. Now, Nepal has long been a source of fighters for foreign armies. Nepali youths were part of the British Army as far back as the 1800s. They were called the British Gorkhas. After India's independence, they became a key part of the Indian Army. But recently, this relationship has been tested. Last year, the Government of India announced a new recruitment scheme. It's called Agnipath, or the Path of Fire. It offers 4 years of trainee service in the army and promises to retain only a quarter of these soldiers permanently, which means the remaining soldiers will have to return to civilian life. Nepal does not like the new scheme. It has protested. Last year, it paused the hiring for Indian Army's Gorkha regiment in Nepal. New Delhi tried to reassure Kathmandu.
We have been recruiting Gurkha soldiers, to the Indian Army for a long time. And we look forward to continuing to recruit Gurkha soldiers to the Indian Army under the Agnipath scheme.
But the promises have not worked. So Nepal's youth is looking for alternatives. And in Russia's Wagner Group, they see a compelling option. But remember, this is not an army. Its operations have been controversial and its future uncertain. Vantage continues after a short break.
was in Albany, my mom called me every day. And in every phone call, my mom said, I have one question. Is Diwali going to be a school holiday this year? Are you going to pass your bill to make Diwali a school holiday? Make sure you get that bill passed, said my mom. And I said, Mom, I'm working on it. I'm going to try. My mom's daily call was the call of our entire community. It was the same phone call that many of you standing here made to me. It was the question every South Asian and Indo-Caribbean family has been asking for over 2 decades. When will Diwali be a school holiday? When will we be seen and heard and recognized as part of the gorgeous mosaic that is our city and country? Even though I was the only Indian woman elected in Albany, I was never alone in the fight. Our community was never alone. There was a force lifting us up. There was a force that said, I hear you. I will elevate you. I won't let you fail. That force was New York City Mayor Eric Adams. When everyone else told us no, Diwali will not be possible, Mayor Adams said yes, Diwali is possible. The mayor said we must come from a place of possibility, not from a place of deficit.
Yep. Diwali to become a school holiday in New York City. So we have this breaking news coming in from the United States where Diwali will become a school holiday in New York City. Diwali, the festival of lights, is set to become a school holiday in New York City, and this announcement was made by Mayor Eric Adams on Monday. Now, thousands of New Yorkers celebrate Diwali each year to commemorate the victory of light over darkness, and the announcement came after state lawmakers recently enacted legislation designating it as a holiday in the biggest school system in the United States. Mayor Eric Adams called the movement a significant win for the local families. So we have this big breaking news coming in from the United States. CNN News 18's Abhishek Jha is joining us on this story. Abhishek, a very good morning to you. Big breaking news coming in from New York City, where Diwali has now been declared as a school holiday.
Of course, Anjali, and with this, Diwali, which is one of the very important Hindu festival, becoming now a holiday in New York, one can also relate how Prime Minister Modi and why Prime Minister Modi was given such a warm and huge reception when he was in USA recently. This holiday was declared after the lawmakers in New York reintroduced and passed this bill. This bill was passed unanimously, so there was no opposition to the. That is the kind of support, the kind of accommodation this Hindi community has been getting in USA. About 600,000 Hindus, Sikhs, Jains who celebrate Diwali will be now able to have a holiday on the occasion of Diwali. Not only people from India, but people from Guyana, Trinidad, Nepal and Bangladesh, all who follow Hindu faith and who practice Hindu, have been demanding for this Diwali to become Diwali to be recognized as a holiday, and New York has become one of the first major city in USA to declare it a public holiday. This year on 12th of November, Diwali will be declared as a holiday, and every year, as per the lunar calendar, whenever the date of the festival falls, that day will be particularly announced as a public holiday in the schools of New York.
Abhishek, now that New York City has announced Diwali as a school holiday, can we expect this to happen in other parts of the United States as well?
Of course, and not necessarily that entire USA will be celebrating it, because there are certain pockets where not a significant population of Indians are there. But yes, we have in the past also seen Diwali being recognized in US House, being celebrated in US House. President Donald Trump had also participated in such occasions. We have frequently seen U.S. lawmakers and senators visiting Diwali, festival of Diwali, that festival of Indian communities, wherever they get a chance. So, in a way, the recognition of Indian community, the recognition of Indian diaspora in USA, that was long overdue, is now coming to the fore. We have seen how Prime Minister Modi was welcomed, and there was again a bipartisan support there in the Congress when Prime Minister Modi was addressing. So that tells that irrespective of the policy, which side of the politics in USA are,